So please welcome back executive producer Karin Gornick. Also, please welcome Jessica Colvin, the director of the Tam Union High School District Wellness Centers. Please welcome Tracy Foose, a local anxiety specialist who's based out of UCSF. And please welcome Jim Wulff and Sarah Wulff, two of the film subjects you just saw in the film. So first, of course, thanks to all of you for being here, and to those of you, obviously, who we just saw on screen. Thank you for sharing your stories and making it possible for us to even have this conversation and for you to be part of it. It really means a lot to us, I think, and to everyone for you guys to also be here in person to talk about it. Can you first just maybe introduce yourselves and say a little bit about your connection, not just to the film, but sort of to this issue and why you're here today with us?
Hello, I'm Jessica Colvin. I'm the Wellness Director at Tamalpais Union High School District, and I see many familiar faces, so thank you for being here to support our work. The number one issue that students come in with to our wellness centers in the district is anxiety and stress. So this issue is really important. I feel like once I saw Angst, a lot of Angst was filmed in our wellness centers at Drake, and once I saw it, it's a teaching tool for our teens. So we're really excited and thankful to the filmmaker, and thankful to all of you for being here today, and we'll talk more about the services and supports we offer in the wellness centers.
Hi, I'm Tracy Foose. I'm a local clinician. I'm a psychiatrist who specializes in anxiety disorders. And I am based in Marin, but before that I was at UCSF for close to 10 years, from about 2008 until about 2018. And I taught a lot about fear neurocircuitry and the way that anxiety disorders work in the brain and why we have them. And that's my area of interest, and I'm delighted to be in Marin now.
So despite the hairline similarities, I'm not Michael Phelps. Just my name is Jim Wulff, and I'm the old guy that sits next to Sarah in the movie.
I'm Sarah Wulff. I was in the movie, and I used to deal with a lot of anxiety.
And I'm Karin, and I'm a parent. And I actually just really want to give Sarah a hand for being here with us tonight. And you too, Jim.
So just to start off, I want to open up to questions, but just to kind of get us started, it feels like, I think it probably feels to all of us that anxiety has become sort of epidemic or more on the rise. Is that real? I'm sure there's also the sense like, is it social media? Like, do we have a sense that this has become, much more rampant, and there's a reason that suddenly, we're having to make a movie and we're having these conversations?
You're looking at me.
You're my eye line, but you're where I'm starting.
Yes, it is. It's an interesting question. It's about around 29% of the general population will meet criteria for an anxiety disorder at some point in their lifetime, and that's I think that stat is from about 2011, and that's from a national epidemiologic survey of about 9,000 people. And when we look at traits of anxiety or language that people use to describe anxiety, and we go back to when we first started interviewing the general population about health phenomena, we see that around the turn of the century, people would describe things like, I feel overwhelmed or on edge. And now, of course, we use somewhat different language to describe those things, but it does seem like over the past 100 years, and especially over the past 20 to 30 years, people describe a lot more anxiety when they describe their general behavioral health.
And can I ask Sarah and Jim, so I just lost my question, so. So I'm wondering if it, how much of a stigma it's felt for you dealing with this and being able to talk about it. I mean, obviously, it took you a while to be able to talk to your parents, but like how you feel, maybe Sarah, about how among your peers and, knowing that there is so much of it, but that it's still hard to speak about, and why you feel like that is, or if you feel like that is still the case.
I think it actually has become a lot easier in the recent years to speak about it because of how common it's become. Like, people speak out about it more now because it's just more, I don't know how to describe it, like,
Prevalent?
yeah, prevalent, and people are less scared to talk about it because it's just more common.
And Jim, did you feel as a parent that you're hearing it more from other parents? I know, Karin, it took you a while to get to that point, but you expressed that it started to happen, but that you are starting to feel like your community really is behind you?
Yeah, I think especially since we started to kind of just talk about it more. I think that's been a really key difference. And I'll have to admit, it's a stigma for the parent too. I mean, I do remember multiple occasions, whether it was because we were dealing with something in public or something else, that you would, the first reaction is embarrassment and not help. And so I do feel as we've started talking about more, and I've seen the film and we've learned more, it's really kind of even changed my personal perspective on it. So it's been helpful.
Well, I'm just curious, how many of you either are dealing with this issue or know someone close to you who is dealing with this issue? So yeah, obviously that's why we're all in the room, but still, this is why it's so important. So one question to Karin, the making of the film and sort of the structure of how you decided what to include. One thing that's obviously, probably obvious to a lot of people that's not mentioned is the use of medication to treat it, that you sort of focused on other resources and solutions. Can you talk a little bit about that choice?
Yes, we didn't include medication in the film very intentionally, and not because it's not a good solution sometimes or helpful. The reason we didn't is because the whole point of the film is to open up the conversation in your home about what we're struggling with, so that people can then get the help that they need that more specific to themselves. And that it may include medication, it may include meditation, it may include acupuncture, it may be that it's associated with ADHD, it may be that it's an issue with an allergy that's causing stress. It could be that it's a problem at home. It could be a nutritional issue. So there's so many different things it could be that we really wanted the tips that are in the film to be accessible to everyone, tips that everybody could do to start trying to control their anxiety before it becomes an anxiety disorder, and also to help them open up talking about it, because that's the first step.
So I'd love to open up to questions. We have 2 mic runners in the aisles so that we can hear everyone's questions. So if you can raise your hand, someone will come to you with the mic. If you can wait till the mic gets to you. There's one down here. Maybe we want to start down here. And I will sort of call out, just so that everyone can hear your question.
Hi, I wanted to ask there we go. I wanted to ask the question about the relationship between depression and anxiety. I heard it mentioned a couple of times in the film, but I've also recently read a ton of statistics that also say depression is on the rise. So I guess my question is there a relationship, or was that intentionally left out of the film because it was sort of a complicating issue? So I guess my baseline question is, what's the relationship between depression and anxiety?
They're very closely related. I'm going to give somewhat of a long-winded answer, but I think it will illustrate why we see a lot of depression and more vulnerability to developing depression among kids with anxiety. So if we link anxiety to a need for control or a temperament that pursues control and certainty, which when we look at anxiety, we see that temperamental trait, which again, as an aside, is why we often see anxiety in people who are quite successful and driven and intelligent. But that pursuit of control over outcomes is something that we can never really get, right? Outcomes are really beyond our control. We can control effort, but not outcomes. And when kids experience a lot of anxiety about a particular outcome, sometimes just the experience of anxiety makes them feel out of control, which actually makes them feel more anxious. Does that make sense? And so this is the kind of looping, underlying engine of anxiety, is that anxiety makes people who like control feel out of control. And we have 2 ways to escape that loop. One is to bring some sense of certainty by saying, I'm just going to fail, or he's going to say no if I ask him out on a date, or if I go to the tryout, I'm going to get rejected. And so we try to bring certainty when there's uncertainty by deciding our fate, because we can't tolerate the uncertainty. And that's a kind of behavior that we probably all catch ourselves doing. We go for worst case scenario, we seize on it, And then that fuels the other behavior, which is avoidance. I'm not even going to show up for that because I already know I'm going to fail. So that pursuit of certainty over something that we can't control, and that shift into avoidance and resignation, like that giving up on something, that really starts to chip away at self-esteem. And it really robs kids of the opportunity to try something that's scary, but to show up and do it. And so depression builds the more we see that kind of resignation and avoidance. And that's a very long-winded answer, but I think it's kind of the key to why those two things are linked.
Any other questions? So yes, right over there. Wait for the mic.
Something I'm very interested in is the internalization of anxiety from the parental structure versus the internal reality of anxiety in someone. Is that clear, the question? I mean, you know, we all carry around a certain amount of anxiety, and then you enter the rat race in the Bay Area of schools and sports and colleges and ACT and SAT and SSAT. And so then you have this huge overlay that doesn't actually belong to the child.
Yeah, the students that I work with in high school feel like the decisions they're making in high school will impact them for the rest of their lives. So if they don't get into a good school, they won't get the job that they want, and they won't be able to make it in life. So they're really anxious, and there's so much going on for them. And there's lots of reasons for that. I think one interesting thing is students, I came to our district thinking, oh, there must be a lot of community and parental pressure and a lot of pressure from teachers. This isn't all kids, but a lot of kids tell me it's internalized at this point. Their parents do not tell them to be a certain way or act a certain way or achieve in a certain way. Their teachers are not necessarily putting pressure on them, but the environment has become pressure-filled, and a lot of it is internal or between them and friends. So that feels really interesting that we've internalized this anxiety in our young people over time, is what I've noticed.
If I could, I just, we're seeing this with Sarah's older daughter. You have an older daughter. Sorry to reveal that in front of all these people. Older sister now, where we tend to be pretty supportive and not trying to define lines or the right college to go to versus the wrong one or the right scores, the right level of achievement. But she's told us outright that, well, this friend's going to Columbia, and this friend's did this on the SATs, and they are talking to each other. And this, as much as we can try to relieve them of it or support them, believe me, it is endemic in just their daily, they're all wound up super tight. And it's just, it's just the way it is right now.
Yes, we have another question down here. Oh, we have one. Thanks so much.
Here you are. Yep. So where do we go with exactly this issue is what I'm dealing with a granddaughter right now. And I know there's no easy answers, but I hear all these things, but it's like, what do you do when the issue's right here, right now? Exactly that. You know, if I don't get into the right college, it's going to change the rest of my life, which in one way it does. Let's face it, it really does. If you don't get into a certain college that's a good fit, I understand that, but where do you go with that as a parent or a grandparent?
That's a really good question. You go get help. So it depends if it's impacting the child's functioning. There is some normal stress. Every high school junior is going to be stressed, and high school senior is going to be stressed about college apps. That's normal. But if it goes above a certain threshold, you do want to reach out to get help. An easy first stop is at your school. So every school in Marin has school counselors. Some schools have wellness centers, and they can help connect you. School social workers can help connect you. You can meet people like Tracy in the community. There's a lot of resources in Marin, but if you feel like it's impacting functioning, you should address it immediately so that it's totally treatable. Anxiety is treatable, but you have to talk about it. You have to name it. I love the name to tame it idea, and get the help that you need.
Just want to add something to that as well, that, you know, something I hear a lot in these panels with the therapists that we have up here is that intensity, frequency, and duration are three things to look at when you're trying to figure out whether something is just normal anxiety or it's turning into an anxiety disorder. So if those three things are increasing and they're affecting your child's or yourself, your everyday, then that's something you probably need to go get help and want to get some support with. I will say that when I first started struggling with what was going on with my son, and I wasn't talking about it, I really had a hard time finding resources, to the point where I ended up in Utah to get help. And now I find out how many incredible resources we have right here. And in fact, we have so many of them here in the room. And this film is only able to be seen in community because we want people to be connected to resources in their community at these screenings. So I'm going to mention a couple right now that are here in the room. So I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand when I call your name, and so people can find you if they want to. Kim Lester, where are you? Did she leave? Anyway, she's an incredible therapist here. Jessica Colvin, who's right up here on our panel, has created wellness centers at Drake and Redwood. And where else? Tam. Incredible what she's doing for our community. Cindy Reynolds, are you in the audience? She is NeuroFit here in Marin, which is incredible. It's about neuroplasticity. Check it out online because, and talk to Cindy, but she really helps connect what's going on in your brain with your body and how to minimize and relieve that anxiety and understanding where it is in your brain. It's incredible. Neuroplasticity is real. Richard Platt, is he here? Richard Platt heads up Teen Solutions here in Marin. Incredible. He especially works with boys. And I know that Lorraine, who's also part of Teen Solutions, works with girls. Look them up. I've got brochures if you need them. So, and then we also have Barbara Brown here. Where's Barbara? She's head of the Marin School. Incredible school, if you haven't heard about it. This was a place where my son landed when he came back from treatment. There are other options if your kids do not fit in a large school. So just know that there are these incredible places like the Marin School. So I just wanted to mention a few, including Tracy, that are here tonight. So.
Okay, right there.
Hi. So I think I heard someone in the film say something about cutting, but what about the anxiety that gets to the point of alcohol, drugs, cutting, other ways to escape and not feel or whatever's happening with those? So I have a daughter. I know she's just starting to have anxiety. I don't know if she's getting to I'm just anxious about like when do those come in? How do I know when it's happening? Like how, I don't know, we just didn't talk about it, so I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one of the takeaway points from the film and tonight that I hope people grab onto is one of the things that we can do about anxiety right away is to reinterpret it, so to disrupt it. And to understand that anxiety is not pathology and anxiety is not dangerous. The behaviors that we engage in to try to escape it are dangerous. Some mildly so, some gravely so. Some take our life away. Some people come in and say, my anxiety is so bad, I want to kill myself. Now, anxiety will not kill them, though when they're having a panic attack, it feels like it will. And we can look at anxiety as something that is adaptive, and if we anthropomorphize our brain, well-intentioned, but extraordinarily uncomfortable in order to get our attention about something. And so really talking about anxiety not as pathology. So one thing that we often do is we say, what are we going to do about our kids' anxiety? How are we going to get rid of this anxiety? And talking about it that way really charges it up with negative power. And if we look at it as something that's quite adaptive and performance enhancing, which is really its primary design, and we're not afraid of being afraid, and we change our relationship with it, that works even in the immediate. You can go home and talk to kids tonight about anxiety can't hurt you. We've all been anxious. I've been anxious. Here are behaviors I've engaged in around my anxiety that have seriously hurt me. And whether that's substance abuse, not showing up for something, avoiding something, giving up, cutting, those are the pathological behaviors that ultimately hurt our kids.
Yes, right over there.
I just kind of want to come back to the question around schools and the pressure in school. I have a daughter at Drake, and there's this pressure around doubling up in science in the sophomore year. And I was a high school guidance counselor for a number of years, so I really value the wellness program. I was at San Francisco Unified, so know how well those can partner. I'm curious, just kind of linking with that, is there something that the wellness program is doing with the counselors to help reinforce the messaging over and over? Because I know that when we would go into classrooms, we would have to repeat the message so many times, and students would say, "You never came in. We never heard you say that." We'd be like, "We went there twice this year." Like, they need to hear it over and over. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the program at the schools in partnership around that pressure around academics and that messaging, beyond like a parent saying, which she's not listening to.
Yeah, we've been working with our school staff and students to do campaigns, different types of campaigns, so they can include workshops in classrooms, they can include poster campaigns, videos that all students can see. Every year, well, for 2 years, we've been around for 3, we've had a Stress Less event before finals, so where we offer support and resources to kids every day of the week. We bring dogs in, we make stress balls with the kids, we talk about different opportunities to reduce stress. This year, we're actually starting a new campaign called Building Hope, Learning to Cope. And our ideas of our campaigns come from the students. The number one issue is anxiety, and the number one thing they say they need is coping strategies. So right now, our campaign in October and November is Building Hope and Learning to Cope, and each school is approaching it a little bit differently, but it's all canvassed all over the school. Like, these are the top 6 things you need to think about to protect your mental health and to take care of yourself. So we're coming up with different creative ways to get the message out, and what we're really trying to do is destigmatize the issues so that students feel really comfortable talking about them and really comfortable getting support. We're feeling really proud because 52% of our students that were seen last year were self-referrals. And that's exactly what we want, is for students to know where to come for support. Not every student is gonna come, and so we come up with these campaigns and workshops in classrooms because you're not gonna hit every kid every time. So we're trying to come up with like multi-pronged approaches to, increase awareness, to destigmatize the topics so that they can walk in the door and get the help they need. Traditionally, a lot of referrals came from adults, so it was like the school counselor to the principal, or and now we're really turning it around, and students know exactly. Again, we're very new, but students know where to come, and they're accessing support on their own. But we still do need to watch for those kids that aren't coming our way and make sure that we expand the safety net for those kids.
Where are we now? Over here.
Hi, I understand this is geared toward teens, and it's wonderful. I wish that this had happened sooner. With my 2 kids and 5 nieces and nephews, it's a poo-poo platter of anxiety and depression, but they're grown, and I think we all understand that if you don't get treatment when you're going through this as a teen, it's not going to go away into adulthood. My question is, it takes one to know one, so I recognize it, and I try to talk about it, I'm addressing it, I'm talking to my sister about her kids, and trying to talk to them individually. How do you get people into treatment? It's just so hard. They know they have a problem, or some kind of do, but how do you get them to get help for it? That's what I'd like some advice.
I think any of us could try to answer that question, but it's really hard. And if someone doesn't want to change, and if they don't see, I think the first step is self-awareness. So I know I have anxiety, I do, and I know it, and so I'm able to deal with it. But if a kid doesn't know about themselves that they have it, hopefully they have a caring parent or an adult who can let them know. And so then it depends on their functioning, So I think, again, there is a healthy level of anxiety for kids, but if it's impacting their life in some significant way, then you want to try to help support them and give them help. And there's so many different ways to get help at this point. So you don't have to work, one-to-one in a therapeutic office. You can join a support group. You can participate in a youth council that talks about anxiety. You can teach about anxiety to other kids. So there's a variety of ways, and you kind of got to hook them in. So oftentimes when we get a referral, it's all voluntary. A student will say no, And so what we do is called the Wellness Connection. We take them on a tour of the wellness center and say and we give them like 5 scenarios of, this might happen and this might be a reason why you come back and this might be a reason to bring a friend in. And we just start normalizing the idea of getting support. And oftentimes those kids come back and refer themselves, but they do have to be ready. In my experience, I'm sure everyone has different experiences. If someone is not ready, it's pretty hard to make change. And the first step is self-awareness. So figuring out what's going on, naming it, and then addressing it. But sometimes it takes time. And young people are often not thinking, I want to go see it. There's stigma around seeing a therapist or getting support. I'm hoping that the wellness centers decrease some of that stigma and offer a variety of different entry points. But it's not an easy question. Not every kid who needs support is getting support, that's for sure.
I think self-awareness is the #1 factor of getting help, because you can force somebody into treatment, and you can force someone into getting help, but it's a matter of they have to know that they have a problem. It took me years of battling with myself to even realize that I had an issue, and that's when I wanted to get help. You can force someone to get help. That doesn't mean they will get better, because they have to realize they have a problem in the first place.
Sarah, let me just ask you.
They made a good point.
I just want to ask Sarah really quickly, what was it that you think really helped you understand that that's what you were struggling with?
Anxiety? I think it really started to peak in middle school, because in elementary school, you're not really aware of your own emotions. You're kind of just going with the flow. But in middle school, everything starts to change socially, and you become more of your own person. You go your own directions, and the social scene in middle school changed everything for me. And I think that when people started to share their stories, and I became friends with people who were more like me, and we were similar, it made me realize that I was similar to them, and that I might have the same issues as them, and that really helped me blossom, and it made me realize that I want to get help, I want to get better, and my parents really helped me with that, because I was finally aware of my own problem.
And Sarah, can you talk about, now that you've just started high school, what that experience is, if you're experiencing more of the same things, or how you're adapting to that new environment, or if that same level of support exists where you are now?
I think that high school has been majorly better than middle school so far. And I think that my parents always say, I wouldn't go back to middle school for $1 billion. It's just the worst, you're changing into your own person, you're becoming self-aware, and you are starting to realize your own interests, and you're becoming your own person, and that's just such a transforming time, because the friends you had in elementary school are going to go their own direction, and you're going to feel lost for a period of time, and it's just the weirdest, most uncomfortable 3 years. When you get into high school, and you find your friends, and you find the people that you're comfortable with, it's just such a relieving experience.
Yeah, they made a good point in the movie that they wish.
Sorry,
Sorry, we're just gonna. It's okay. You'll get your chance. Let's just close out.
Excuse me, sir. I have the pink microphone.
That's all. Jim's our comic relief.
One thing I just wanted to mention on that too is when you talk about treatment, I would heartily advocate everybody do your homework if you're trying to help somebody, and don't leave any rock unturned. I give so much credit to my wife, but there was so many efforts on kind of typical Western style support for Sarah that ultimately just didn't feel right and didn't line up with what we were seeing and what we were feeling about how we wanted to help and raise Sarah. And Jenna was just dogged, and there has to be a different way. There has to be something more tied to it. And in our case, it turned out to be a very strong naturopathic solution. But that's not for everybody. I'm not advocating that versus other, but just keep all your options open, and don't kind of hone in on one solution. That could help too.
Thank you.
It is your time in the spotlight.
Are you sure?
I am so sure.
Okay.
Do you want the pink mic?
They made an interesting point in the movie that she wished that they could intervene earlier with children. What are ways to build into the school system ways to create an educational component of teaching parents and students in a normalizing way, rather than waiting later to have to treat or intervene?
I think you're absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's so many different ways to look at it, and can you repeat your question? I'm sorry, I'm anxious. I just went blank. I got anxiety.
Early intervention.
Well, I mean, imagine if the curriculum.
Oh, yeah, I know you're. I got
Imagine
your
if the curriculum in grade school included anxiety
I heard you.
awareness for students and parents.
So my whole career has been working with high school students, and I always feel a little bit guilty about that because I feel like there's so much work to be done with younger kids. And there is a huge push right now for social and emotional learning. And there's all kinds of curriculum that's being put into the schools. A lot of the public schools here in Marin have a social and emotional learning curriculum. So getting the information in young. I know the Cove School does meditation every day, and they do trainings about anxiety and depression really, really young. So I think that's really important. And I think that our middle schools have some great programs. We have a Being Adept program in a lot of our middle schools, but I think it's true that there's not consistency in every school. Not every school has adopted social and emotional learning. I'm very, very grateful to our district for letting us go in there, and our 9th graders are getting health education, but we really don't have anything for 10th through 12th graders, and our wellness program is trying to bring in information for those older kids, and I think it's necessary from the very beginning. And I can tell you that I have young kids, and one of them is very anxious. He got it from me, and we've been talking about it since he was 3 years old. We've been talking and naming it, and I tell him I have it too, and we talk. When I see him feeling anxious, we discuss it. At this point, he hasn't needed treatment because and I don't know, he doesn't have a severe case at this point, but we've been talking about it ever since he was little. He knows exactly what anxiety is. He thinks it's hilarious that I'm on the panel tonight. I was like, I'm feeling a little anxious about tonight, but I'm in good company. So anyways, I think it's very, very important, and I do see a shift since I've been working in the schools for 17 years, and I've seen a huge shift in the past few years of younger populations like elementary schools reaching out and asking what kinds of curriculum we're using in the high schools. So I think it is the wave of the future, but I don't think that everyone is even as up to date as we are here in Marin.
I want to jump into, not as a anxiety expert, but as a mom. And I have 3 kids in Wade Thomas Elementary School. And I was so thrilled when I went in there and realized that they were doing a curriculum and an approach to teaching that was based on growth mindset theory. So I'm curious, a show of hands of folks in the audience who know what growth mindset is. Yeah, so that's something, if you don't know what it is, to look into, because it's kind of this new disruptive approach to the way to run a tech company, or the way to live your life, or the way to raise a child. But it's really more on that point of shifting from outcomes that we fantasize about being within our control, but are most definitely not, to shifting toward a focus on daily efforts that are within our control. So not, I have to get an A on this test, but I have to study 2 hours every night this week and really do my best to focus in order to do a performance I'm proud of on this test. Very different approach to challenge. And that is something that they're building in at schools at a very young age. I'm seeing it as a parent. I will say also that it's not a too late. It's like a, hey, you can spare kids from a lot of suffering if you kind of model some resilience strategies from an early age. I treat people in my practice who are 87 and have never put words to anxiety. Anxiety is very treatable. It's not like a, you missed it and now they're hosed. It's a very, very treatable thing. It's just a lot of us have never thought about anxiety in a different way before.
So we're going to get close to time, but I wanted, if there are any young people in the audience who have a question, since we have not had a chance to take one, if there's, and that, this isn't just about the parents, obviously, this is for, so if there is anyone. They're studying. Yeah, we can do. All right, so if not, then where are we with our next question? We were over here, yes, right there. And that will be, that's our last question.
Thank you. Just what a wonderful movie. Thank you so much. What a And I'm so glad I had the chance to see it. I missed it when it was at various schools in Marin. But Sarah pretty much answered my question about at what age do we show this movie to kids, and really reducing stigma, right? So the more that they see this and the more that we're talking about it, it reduces stigma and it encourages people to get help. How do we get this into our middle schools? Who do we contact? How do we move that forward?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The film is made for students 10 and up. And so it's being shown right now in schools, middle schools, high schools, and to parents of elementary schools, and as well as corporations. So if you go to angstmovie.com, you can easily click on host a screening and license the film to bring it to your school. What I call the dream rollout is when the film is shown as an assembly to each grade, so that all the students have to go. And then they go back to their health class or advisory class where they all have discussions and can talk in a group of like 25. And that's where you can really have those more intimate discussions. And then at the end of the week, have a parent screening. And without a doubt, when this happens, the kids are going home and saying to the parents, you need to go, or can you come with me to that parent screening so you know that I'm not just making this up, or what I'm saying is the truth, this kind of thing. So that's like the dream rollout. So really what I'm focused on right now is just trying to get this in as many middle and high schools as possible. And I've had a lot of schools, a lot of communities in crisis reach out after there's been a suicide in the community, and now really wanting to find more proactive, showing the film more proactively. So showing it at the beginning of the year, in the fall, to every incoming freshman. And that's really what we're trying right now. We've come up with a curriculum called the Creative Coping Toolkit that can go along with the film so that there's a really easy way for teachers to talk about this with the kids and the strategies that they can take home. So yeah, if anyone has a corporation or a school where you'd like to bring this, you can go to angstmovie.com.
And speaking of things you can take home, do you want to just give a quick shout out to?
For the Wellness Teen Film Series, we've created a list of parent and student discussion questions, conversation starters about each of our topics. So we put together a list of questions that you can get on your way out that are really open-ended questions to start conversations with your kids.
So we have volunteers at both doors that are handing those out on the way out.
Yeah, so keep the conversation going at home.
So we are out of time. We have another show coming in here. So if you do have more questions for all of these guys, we'll have them outside and continue if you like. Thank you so much to all of you for being here for this film, and thank you for coming.
That was the worst high five ever. I'm sorry.
No, that was like very high.